I tend to stand, so it makes me a little bit more comfortable walking around. So please excuse me. Yeah. All right. So basically, when I was asked to make a presentation here, I decided that we'd look at food politics and human behavior between California and Macedonia. I've been doing work in Macedonia for the last 4 or 5 years, excavating a site at Cernabuki outside of Bitola, and now at Demirkapia as well. So we have field schools going on. It's been interesting. I'm a California prehistoric archaeologist. I'm Macedonian diaspora. My father moved to the US. So that's my way of introduction. If I can move on from there. There's the locations of the sites and or the site, Cernabuki, in Macedonia. Northern California, this is sort of a random map, but I live right about here. This area here is what I'm referring to, this Northern California region. So got some context. San Francisco is right there. Going to the next slide. I'm going to look at climate change and environment relative to socio-political change. So how did people not necessarily adapt? How did they use the environment with climate change from the Pleistocene all the way through into contemporary Holocene, late Holocene times? Do I need this? Or you get
Maybe just because of recording.
Gotcha. Okay. Hopefully it's on. Can you hear me? All right. We look at a shift between the hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural and pastoral societies worldwide. In California, the shift is to horticulture. In particularly Northern California, in the Americas, we all know that there was agriculture going on with the Maya, the Aztec, the Southwest cultures, and into the upper Midwest, we actually had a Bronze Age or a Copper Age there. But where we're from, in Northwest California, it remained in the Stone Age, but there were significant horticultural activities going on. In Macedonia, we have the, as you know, it's pretty simple for the archaeologists, but we go from, we see an expansion of pastoralism and to agriculture with the shift from the Pleistocene to the early Holocene as the weather warms up, as the climate warms up, excuse me. One of the interesting aspects of this is that we, in the Balkans, it's one of the greatest linguistic diversities in Europe, right? In our region in Northern California, we have the highest level of linguistic diversity in the United States. So there's a comparative analysis here that starts to show up. Lots of people ended up occupying these prime lands in the Balkans and in Northern California. By 1850 or so, and it was really late when Europeans ended up in our neck of the woods in our area, we start seeing we have control over valleys, and a wealth-based society is developed, but there's a real heavy population density by the time the European culture starts to influence the Native American culture. There's a period, I don't know if you're familiar with the language, we term it altithermal. That happens, we come out of the Pleistocene and the weather starts warming up. For some reason, and I'm not sure why, but the tilt of the earth changes and we have a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase during the altithermal. That's 8,000 to 4,000 years ago or so. The Pelargonian populations grow and resources start to become aggregated under centralized authority by the Neolithic and into the Bronze Age. California populations grow and there's relatively less resource stress. The populations aren't big yet. But the intensification, you start intensifying the upland areas, and storage and distribution of resources centralize the authority as well. So the wealth-based societies start to develop in California, wealth-based societies start to develop in Macedonia. What we see in California is pretty unique in that we have 50% less effective moisture during this time. So what happens is in the upland areas, we lose, have you guys heard of the redwood tree? Giant trees. We start losing the redwood trees. Their biome starts shrinking. That allows the oak woodlands and the grasslands to open up. With that, and at the same time, we have 50% less moisture. What happens there is only the best of the springs are available, and the elk and the deer populations expand tremendously. So now we have a reliable hunter-gatherer source of food. Those elk and deer herds are tethered to only the reliable sources of water. So everyone knows where they are. It's their refrigerator, if you will, their meat locker. So we see in those upland areas where the oak woodlands expand, we start seeing intensification of those areas, large residential habitations, organized societies where they're radiating out to go collect acorns, go collect grass seeds, go collect meat. This, in the end, requires a significant amount of storage. So they're preserving food, and then with the centralization of that storage, you have a necessity to redistribute that food stuff. And this is happening 4,000 to 8,000 years ago. That creates power within the social dynamic. So now we start to develop wealth societies. In Macedonia, as you guys know, in the Balkans, at this same time, we're starting to see agriculture increase. We're starting to see food storage increase. We see that same need for the redistribution of foodstuffs and monetary and wealth-based societies starting to aggregate. This happens all over the world. Let me see, next one. With the climate change, as we come into the Holocene, this is sort of a representation of what it looks like when the Europeans first got to California. They said it was like a giant garden. It was so well managed by people that it looked as if it was a garden all throughout the state. This is the result of the fires you guys have been hearing about in California. We did post-fire surveys. These big blocks of homogeneous plants and foodstuffs start showing up because they're fire resistant. They love fire. So the foodstuffs that the Native Americans have been cultivating through knowledge, through agricultural or horticultural practice, start coming back. We see that seed bed as exploding throughout California, throughout the fire burned areas. This is a tarweed that where the seeds were used for food. Similarly, we are now in a period of climate change that we have 1.5 degree minimally now increase in temperature. As we come out of the altithermal and into, before I lose track here, come into the later Holocene, where the climate becomes cooler and wetter, we have a developed society in California that requires redistribution of food, and that centralizes power and creates a wealth-based society. Now, as we come into the later Holocene, populations start exploding. There's a need, even in horticulture, to have people to manage the land, a population to manage the agriculture or the horticulture. As we come into a more stressful time where we have more water and we have less open grasslands and woodlands, we see the intensification going downhill to the rivers, and they're harvesting salmon. Salmon at scale require a lot of manpower and a lot of storage. So then now we really see the wealth-based societies and the stratification in society developing. It's not so much agricultural product as it is salmon processing and some acorn storage or nut storage. Go to the next slide. In Macedonia, we see this is the agricultural lands of outside of Cernabuki where we're working. We see, it's not going to work for me here. Sorry about that. We see, I'll sit down. We see agriculture expanding. We see a very wet environment. This region was all underwater later in time. During the Middle Holocene, we have yet to do the studies, but I suspect that this was open as we see it today. It's diked off, or there's canals that are made to drain the swamp, if you will, that was created in the late Holocene. So what we see here is likely what it was like during the Altithermal, where there's available agricultural land, the need for storage, and that helps develop the wealth-based societies that we end up seeing in the Bronze and the Iron Ages, including the development of the Macedonian kingdom itself, right? So the Middle Holocene to late Holocene, the stage is set. So we have people, we have the systems in place, we have the development of a need for agricultural societies, but a need for power dynamic, a hierarchical society. Climate becomes cooler, populations are high, the resource pressure becomes intense. We start seeing defensive postures in Macedonia. We start seeing defensive postures in California. The fortresses are starting to be built on acropolises, gradistes. In California, we have strategically placed villages that are in defensive positions. In Macedonia, we see terracing of the landscape to defend against invaders. Wealth and social stratification start to become prominent in both societies. And now I'll get to the good stuff. This is an obsidian blade from California, and this is a wealth item. There's no function to this. This is very expensive. You have to trade it in from hundreds of miles away, and it's only used in ceremony. So there's another one. And these things can literally be this tall. They're later in time, it gets pretty intense. This is a dentalium shell money, and it's a display of wealth. So these folks are Karuk people, Native Americans, contemporary times, but even their veils are made of dentalium shell money. You'll notice their hats here. The basket caps. Northern California is known for the finest basket weavers in the world, really. They cook in these baskets. They put hot rocks in them, but they're watertight. So they're just incredibly detailed, and every symbol, geometric symbol, means something to them. And then there's some dentalium shell money being traded as far as the upper Midwest. So now we're seeing a commerce happening. Now, again, the societies aren't that much different. It's just that there wasn't the need for as much resource. There wasn't as much resource pressure in North America as there was, or at least in Northwest California, as there was in Europe. Again, this is the site we're working on. You can see the coinage, the systematic, the fortress up here. We likely have a theater here. We've got Proto-Venetian bead. You guys will appreciate that from here, from what I understand. A lady from France came out and said that's Venetian style, but it's 600 years before the establishment of Venice. So, and we see fortresses in Dimir Capia that last for only 30 years, but the investment's worth it because they need to defend against the Celts. So we have a lot of population pressure going. So what's the point here? If I get moving on, we move into what are the current issues with cultural heritage. So we see the similarity of development. We see the similarity of the societal structure happening between the two, both in California and Macedonia, and we look towards changing heritage. So as we're discussing, and you were discussing just now, the heritage and culture change with reality. We see that through time. We see that in contemporary times. The Native American culture in California is experiencing a very strong revival. Their heritage is very important, excuse me, internally, and it's become more and more important externally as well. They're used to a wealth-based society. Over millennia upon millennia, oral history has persisted, even though there have been attempts to literally exterminate. Genocide was occurring with these tribes as well. But culture has persisted. I wrote a book as a tribal historic preservation officer from the mouths of your ancestors. The language that was being spoken by the tribe was dying, but they funded us to preserve it. So we did. This is now with the development of casinos, that source of revenue. They've started to revive their culture at scale, if you will, all throughout at least California. So things are looking up. We're working with our partners here. We're working with our partner in Macedonia. We're working with our partners in California. We've been doing this for 30 years in my entire career. The rest of the United States, not so much. American archaeology is a little bit different. It's not been at any point in time conducted by those who live in the culture. It's always the external culture doing the archaeology and the anthropology of the Native American culture. Here it's a bit different. We need to adapt in this time of environmental change and target those aspects of culture, tangible and intangible, that are benefiting from climate change and preserve those that may be lost. So if you look back in California, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? All right. All right. Excellent. All right. We have aspects, if you look back in time, we go, okay, they were intensifying during the altithermal, they were intensifying the use of upland areas. At the late Holocene, Native Americans were intensifying the use of lowland areas. It's that same adaptation that we need to take today. We're experiencing a 1.5 degrees Celsius change in climate. The tribes have always been able to adapt to the changing environment or take advantage of the resources that are afforded them with a different environment. I think that's what we need to do in this time of stress, in this aggregation of power in the hands of a few. We need to understand that what's important, what's benefiting from the changes, and what is preserve those things that may be lost. And so that aspect of culture. During the Pleistocene in North America, salmon were plentiful. There's plenty of moisture, plenty of water. During the altithermal, there are very few, but they existed. We find it in the archaeological record, and we find salmon bone here and there. Later in time, as the salmon come back, we see them all throughout. Every deposit has massive amounts of salmon because they're intensifying their use. We need to take that as an example. We need to understand what's going to be available for intangible culture to persist. And then we need to take that back and make sure that those few salmon that are in that river during these difficult times are preserved. We need to educate the next generation to respect the critical importance of extant culture through the preservation of the intangible. And we need to be wary of the centralization of power, work together to preserve diversity and ensure prosperity for all in the end. So, and then my last slide, that's what does it say, 2005? That's my son before he was 2 years old, and now he's 22. Training the new generation with a new philosophy, and that's me, my son, and a Native American gentleman excavating an archaeological site 20 years ago. So we've been doing it for a while now. We've been participating and collaborating to ensure the preservation of the past for those whose culture it is. We need to continue this and train our next generation well. That's it. Thank you.